Happy Friday, everyone. John Lorden here with another episode of BrainScratch. Before we get started today, I want to let you know that a thunderstorm has apparently just started here, so you might occasionally hear a little rumbling in the background. And I want to give a big thank you to Kim for letting me know about today's topic. I also have an email that came directly to me from the daughter of one of the victims that we're talking about today. Her name is Valerie, and here is some of what she wrote to me. Hello, John. My name is Valerie, and I'm the daughter of William A. Walker, who was killed by a pipe bomb in his home on August 2nd, 2008. This year is the 10th anniversary of the murder. 10 years of not knowing why this happened to this man that we loved so much. My mother passed this year not knowing who did this and why. My kids and I had just gotten to my parents' home in Moses Lake, Washington on the evening of August 1st, 2008. We were just passing through on our way to Ohio, where I live. My son was stationed at Fort Lewis in Tacoma, and my daughter and I had flown in to help my son and his wife move to Ohio so he could attend Ohio State. We were just going to be in Moses Lake for the weekend. We were going to eat all of our favorite places, cook out, and have a great time visiting our family there. On Friday evening, August 1st, we had a big cookout and visited well into the evening. Bill was killed the next morning after my mother, sister, the kids, and I had went to Kashmir to visit a nephew and his new baby. We were an hour drive away when we were notified of the death of Bill. The Grant County Sheriff Department claimed it was an accident until later that night when another man, Javier Adami, was killed by a bomb in a police scanner. Bill had been killed by a pipe bomb placed in a battery charger. It has since been determined that the bombs were made of the same material. Bill was my stepfather. He married my mom, who had 8 children in 1969. It takes a big man to take on such a task, and he was a stern but very loving and giving man. This murder had caused our family a grief beyond what anyone can understand. We have since raised a $10,000 reward in hopes that someone will come forward with any information about these 2 murders. And then Valerie offered to answer any questions I had. I actually sent an email back to her with a few questions. She responded to that and sent her phone number. I literally got off the phone with her about 10 minutes ago. This is a woman that is still hurting very badly over this murder. It's 10 years, and she really wanted me to echo they worked really hard to get that $10,000 reward together. And if someone out there has information about who placed these bombs, why these men were killed, please get that information into Crime Stoppers. There's a phone number in the description box below. I did take notes about my conversation with Valerie. We will get back to those after we go through the available media. Let's start with the Crime Stoppers poster. Do you know who killed us? And here we see Bill on the left. I'm just going to call him Bill from here on out because Valerie seemed to really stick with that name, and I'm going to do the same. And Javier. Grant County Sheriff's Office is seeking your help in solving 2 related cold case homicides. Once again, they're just giving us the basics of the information. Here we get a time frame. The bomb that killed Bill happened between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. on August 2nd. And then just after midnight, rolling into August 3rd, is when Javier died as a result of a similar explosion. And just to get the phone number out there and be very clear about it, you can call 509-586-8477. And it seems like on the listing here, they're missing a number, but I believe it's 800-222-8477. If I remember right, the ending spells tips if you look at a phone keypad. So that's the phone number. Let's start by learning just a little bit about Moses Lake. Moses Lake is a city in Grant County, Washington, United States. The population was 20,366 as of the 2010 census. It is the largest city in Grant County. Going over to the Seattle Times, let's start looking into the details of this case. And this is dated August 5th, 2008. 2 explosions killed 2 people within 10 hours in Grant County, and authorities were investigating whether they were connected. The cases were being investigated by the Grant County Sheriff's Office, Washington State Patrol, and the FBI. Authorities were trying to determine whether the explosions were connected to each other or to a pipe bomb that blew up a truck near Soap Lake 2 weeks ago. So now we're hearing about 3 potential explosions, 2 of them fatal. The sheriff's office has reported an increase in gang-related activity around Moses Lake, as well as an increasing presence of the old motorcycle gang. And I can tell you, after speaking to Valerie, there's several theories that we're going to touch on, but one of these about some gang-related activity is certainly something that we have to consider. Javier was, from what I can tell, was a drug dealer. I think there's some articles that are very clear about that. So there might be some gang-related element here. How does that tie to Bill? I really don't know, and that's probably one of the biggest mysteries that we have going on here. Why Bill and Javier using the same mechanism? So let's learn more about the first explosion that is being considered as being related to all this. That was actually a truck. The first explosion was a pipe bomb detonated July 23rd in Soap Lake, destroying a 1985 Dodge Ram pickup, according to Grant County Under Sheriff John Turley. The truck was parked in a field across from a home on Othello Place in the Lakeview area. Quote, "Our arson investigator collected remnants of a pipe bomb," Turley said. "It completely destroyed the truck. Investigators haven't found a reason for the bomb and are continuing the investigation." And I got to just tell you guys right off the bat, I'm wondering if this bomb is related to the other 2. I haven't seen anything saying that in terms of any analysis of it, in terms of its construction or the materials that were used, that it matches these other 2. And what really strikes me about it is the MO just seems completely different. This almost seems like something, some teenagers might do, make a pipe bomb and blow up a truck or something like that. It's not quite the same as someone engineering a bomb within a piece of electronic equipment that they had to know the men well enough to know that they were going to use. Giving a police scanner to a drug dealer, there's probably a pretty good chance that he's going to check that out and maybe plug it in, possibly use it going forward. Bill did have boats in the past. It's unclear if he had a boat at the exact time, but the battery charger, from what I understand, was a marine battery charger, basically a battery charger specifically for boats. And we're going to hear a little more detail on that when I get back to the phone call with Valerie, but let's continue here. The second explosion was Saturday at a home 4 miles east of Moses Lake. Turley said William Arlie Walker, 69, Moses Lake, was found by his 28-year-old grandson face down in a workshop at the home under debris. Walker had somehow experienced severe trauma due to a possible explosion and had received wounds to his neck and chest, Turley stated. Mr. Walker was pronounced deceased at the scene, apparently due to the trauma experienced from an explosion. Walker was a retired electrician with no criminal background, Turley said. "I feel sorry for Mrs. Walker. It could have been a complete accident in his shop. I feel badly we have to put her through this. But we would be amiss if we did not make sure we were positive about the circumstances that have evolved in a 12-day period." Now, what's curious about that is there's actually a very good podcast that was done on this by a person that's a bit of a Twitter pal of mine. He was actually at CrimeCon, but we unfortunately couldn't meet up. His name is Mike Morford, and he has a podcast called The Murder in My Family. I think just about a week ago from when you guys are watching this, he posted an episode about this case as well. He has an interview with the granddaughter of Bill, and that interview is really good. And I highly recommend that if you guys are interested in this case, get over on this link, listen to this interview, and get some more details from a family member on it. But one of the details that she brings up is that police initially didn't treat it as a crime scene. Essentially, we had another one of these cases where there might have been some assumptions that were quickly made and they didn't rope it off. Because of that, we had Bill's wife coming home There was some friends that were being very kind, they thought, and wanted to help clean up the scene so that she wouldn't have to see that. And of course, there was all this damage from the bomb going off. They didn't know that it was a true crime until the second bomb went off. So it didn't get processed as a crime scene until after many people had gone through it. They were literally cleaning it up, sweeping it up. And unfortunately, I think there's probably a very good chance that some evidence might have been either tainted or possibly even removed before the police actually got to see it. So I think there was this assumption, and he kind of touches on it here, that they thought maybe it was just an accident. 69-year-old man, former electrician. I really wish that they would have considered that. This is a guy that has experience working with these things. But it seems like they assumed it was an accident a bit too easily and then had to come back after the fact. So then we have the third explosion, Sunday, just after midnight, within 10 hours of the bomb that killed William Walker. Javier Martinez Adame, 53, Moses Lake, was found by sheriff's deputies on the kitchen floor with a severe wound to his chest and stomach in his home. It was determined that an explosive device Mr. Adame may have been handling at the time had exploded, killing him almost instantly, Turley stated. Deputies who had arrived on scene advised of a pungent air filled with the smell of sulfur both in and outside of the residence. 2 search warrants were served on the home. The first was a search for evidence connected to the bomb. Investigators found pipe bomb-making materials, including pipe, end caps, nails, electrical wires, and timing devices, according to Turley. I just want to stop there for a second because I don't know if you would find all these items in my garage. I think you could probably find pipe, nails, electrical wires, maybe not end caps, but it's not necessarily completely out of the realm that you might be able to find end caps in some people's garage. I mean, if they've done any type of plumbing work at home, or even some electrical work, sometimes you'll use pipe for running wires through. You might have pipe, end caps, nails, and electrical wires around your house. Timing devices, I don't know what they're considering for timing devices here. Are we talking about an egg timer? Are we talking about electrical? I have electrical timers. I use them for making sure lights turn on and off and a fountain turns on and off at a particular time of the day. But we don't have good detail on the timing devices. What we're not being told clearly here is that they actually found the explosive materials outside of what the actual bomb had within it. So I'm curious about this statement that they found pipe bomb making materials at the home, just because many of these items are common. That's part of why this pipe bomb thing is a real problem, because you can go to the hardware store and essentially buy everything you need for doing this. So I look at this a little leery. It does make me think of the possibility of, I don't know, if Javier wanted to end his life for some reason, would he have put this thing together himself, or was he trying to put it together to deliver it to someone else, and while he was assembling it, there was some accident? We're going to bump into some information that says that's probably not the case, but it did strike me when I was first reading these details that could be a possibility. During the initial search, deputies found more than 3 grams of methamphetamine and syringes, causing them to obtain a second warrant to search for drugs. A few people are known to have rented rooms in the home, but investigators are unable to determine how many people lived with Adame. Adame has a criminal drug history, said Turley. He was convicted for sales of narcotics. The U.S. Army sent an explosive ordnance detection team to assist. The FBI provided 18 special agents from the emergency response team to assist in gathering evidence at the scenes, and 3 to assist with the autopsies. The Grant County Fire Marshal's Office is also assisting in the investigations. I just wanted to call out how many different agencies we have that are getting into this investigation, and it just kind of blows my mind that here we are sitting 10 years later, and this thing hasn't been solved for some reason. I mean, we've got experts from the FBI. We've got the U.S. Army sending resources. How is this not figured out? I really don't know. Finding pipe bombs is not that unusual, said Turley. 3 months ago, a pipe bomb was found along an irrigation canal back in the Soap Lake area. it was not exploded. So that's interesting. We're now talking about the truck that blew up in the Soap Lake area. Well, they also found a different pipe bomb in that area. Is that related to these two? I think I would include it with the truck bombing, but say I'm not sure that that's related to the rest of this. We find them every now and then, said Turley. It's been quite a while since we had one. Just as a test, I was kind of just struck by that statement. I'm like, how often is it? I mean, he's saying that it's not that unusual. We kind of find pipe bombs all the time. And so I did just a quick search, and maybe you guys can do this for yourselves as well. Put in the city that you live in and put in pipe bomb and hit the news tab and look for stories. I was kind of amazed at how many I saw. And it does occur. That is the danger of this mechanism. It is, I don't want to say it's easy to do, but because it's using available items, the likelihood that there is going to be some pipe bombs in any particular area exists. And I was really surprised to see how often it happens in my particular area as well. Getting back to NBCRightNow.com, autopsies completed after explosions kill two. They were completed Tuesday on 69-year-old William Arlie Walker and 53-year-old Javier Martinez Adame. Both died of multiple blast impact injuries in separate explosions over the weekend near Moses Lake. Chief Deputy Coroner Lynette Henson said Wednesday the circumstances at each scene were different and there's nothing to suggest a connection. I shook my head when I first read that. Of course, I think I read some of the information out of order. It could be that if I read this at the time that maybe I would be open to that, but it's fairly clear at this point that they are certainly connected. And keep in mind that a medical examiner probably, or even a chief deputy coroner, probably isn't going to have access to all the investigation information. I don't know. It's a really weird statement to wind up in the news on something like this. Two bombs going off about 5-6 miles away from each other, and both using similar mechanisms in terms of them being in electronics, and when the person plugs it in, they blow up, but we don't think it's connected. It's kind of a weird statement. Evidence in both cases is being sent to the State Patrol Crime Lab. Deputies are looking into a possible connection to a pipe bomb explosion 2 weeks ago that blew up a pickup truck. Over at KHQ.com, this is a really strange development that happens several months later. This happens in December. So the bombs happen in early August. That following December, body found in Moses Lake home. But not just any home, the home of where the second bomb went off, Javier's home. The Grant County Sheriff's Office has launched an investigation after the body of an adult female was found inside a home on North Stratford in Moses Lake. The body was discovered Tuesday. Officials say the call came into their office from a woman who has access to the house. She reported finding the body of a dead, naked woman on the bedroom floor. When police arrived on scene, they surveyed the area and determined the scene to be suspicious. The Grant County coroner says the body of the woman in her 30s had been dead for a period of time before being discovered. Grant County Sheriff secured the scene without removing the body because of the suspicious nature of the scene. They then called in the WSP Crime Lab to assist. This action was taken due to the unkempt nature of the house, which made it difficult to determine if anything was amiss. The home, which was owned by Adame's brother, is known in the area for drug activity. A neighbor says there has been a lot of traffic in and out of the house, but that traffic has slowed since the pipe bomb incident. So we now have two people die in the same home in a matter of 6 months. Is all of this related? I'm still not positive. Over at SeattlePI.com, the Grant County coroner is awaiting the result of toxicology tests. The Tri-City Herald reports Thursday's autopsy on 30-year-old Heather Smith showed no trauma or lethal injury. So that's kind of interesting. Obviously, they're looking for a drug-induced cause here. We do know that this is a house where there's certainly some drug use, probably some drug dealing going on there. Even the way that they describe the manner in which they found the house might suggest that as well. But what I'm curious about is when we heard about this house earlier, they were talking about how there were so many roommates that lived there. And then now we're hearing about this instance and the fact that Heather's body was probably left there for some period of time before she was found. Where are the roommates in this? Did they move out in that period of time? Was she grieving the loss of her boyfriend? I don't think I mentioned that yet. Yeah, Javier Adame was actually Heather Smith's boyfriend. Smith's naked body was found Tuesday on the floor next to the bed. Sheriff's deputies are investigating the death as suspicious. Her 53-year-old boyfriend, Javier Martinez Adame, was killed August 3rd by a pipe bomb explosion in the kitchen. Now, what is very strange about this is the news on this aspect in terms of Heather Smith. I can't find anything after this. And I did ask Valerie about this as well, if she had heard any updates after this. She hasn't. So I'm a bit concerned. And when we start looking at this case, if we do consider the theory that there is some type of criminal drug-related activity going on in here, was there some reason that they would have wanted to not only take out Javier, but to take out Heather as well? Was she picking up his business? Was she continuing his business after his death? Did she have some information about his death that maybe they were worried was going to come out or something along those lines? Or was this a woman in grief that just turned to narcotics a little too much in her final days? I still don't know. That's basically where this leg of the story ends. There's just no other information on Heather. Back at SeattlePI.com, this is an article from August 7th, 2010, and it's about another bombing in the area. Warden, a car was destroyed Saturday night by a bomb so powerful it was heard throughout this town of 2000 in Grant County. Responders rushed to the scene, which was a parking lot of a food processing plant. They discovered a car with its windows blown out in the employee parking lot of a company that is a frozen potato supplier. Investigators determined the damage was caused by the detonation of an improvised explosive device that had been planted inside the vehicle. No one was injured and no other vehicles or buildings were damaged. So we're now talking, what's strange to me about this is the date. We're talking 2 years and a few days later, another bomb pretty reasonably close to the area. Let me bring up a map to just kind of give you some sense of what we're talking about here. Soap Lake is where the truck bomb went off. And then we also had another pipe bomb that was found there that was not detonated. 4th Street Northeast, this is where Bill lived. And then North Stratford Road, this is where Javier lived. And then just a little bit further south, it looks like, I don't know, it could be maybe 15 miles or so. This is where the 2010 bomb happens. Now, I just got to tell you guys, I know I covered the case of the Texas bomber only a few months ago, but it is kind of strange to me that I'm seeing all this activity once again tied to a specific highway. It looks like Highway 17 is... I'm sure it's just a main way to get through the area, of course. You can see there's not a lot of highways around here, but all of these events are really keyed very closely to Highway 17. You can see, I mean, Bill's was a little bit of a drive out, about 4 miles out to his house. And even this one, once again, look at the distance from Highway 17 to where it actually happens. That's only maybe 2.5 miles there. So... could they all be possibly related? I don't know, because once again, I'm looking at the MO and I'm saying someone's blowing up cars. They blew up a car up here. They blew up a car out there. When I look at this is just different. We've got a different method of operation that's happening with the type of bomb. And by the way, there's something really nagging at me about the electric devices, that they would be attractive to the person. You know, for example, switch those devices. Let's say that Bill received the police scanner. Would he plug it in? Maybe at some point, you know, he's a former electrician. Maybe he'd want to see if it works and he would check it out. And if it was broken or something, he might try to fix it. So you got some possibility there. What about Javier? I don't know if he had a boat or not, but if he didn't have a boat, What would he do with a Marine Charger? Would he even plug it in? Would he even take a look at it? There's just something to me in terms of the items being attractive to the person that they ultimately killed that to me feels premeditated, looks like someone really thought about this and really engineered this in a very kind of sick way. So I just wanted to run that guys by you. It's just something that I really can't seem to get out of my head, let's just say. Over at khq.com, investigators assigned to the bomb incident which destroyed a car this past Saturday night in Warden do not believe there is any connection between the Warden incident and the two Moses Lake bombing incidents in 2008. Now, they're not saying that they don't believe it couldn't be tied to the Soap Lake incidents, but obviously I just told you guys I pretty much agree with them on that assessment. Just the MO of the act is very different. Over here at ifiber1.com, family still hoping for answers nearly 5 years after homicide. This is a picture of Bill taken just a day before he was killed. Just really breaks my heart. And unfortunately, there is a video link here, but it doesn't work anymore, so I can't see what the point of this article was, but thankfully I went all the way to the bottom where I found these comments I wanted to share with you guys. Sandra on February 27th, 2013. I just read your article, and I also want to thank you for spreading the word out about our loved ones taken from us way too soon. I believe that someone out there knows who murdered my brother, Javier M. Adame, and William. It makes me sick to my stomach that the person or persons that did this are still going on with their lives, as the lives of my family was changed forever. And I don't know how to pronounce this. I want to say Averile. February 27th, 2013 also says, thank you so much for helping spread the word about the murder. My grandfather was an amazing man. People of Moses Lake need to remember that even if they didn't know him, a murderer is still living in their community. We appreciate every bit of support we can get from all of you. And the same day, Heather Reeves, thank you so much for doing the story and getting it out there for everyone to see. R.I.P. Grandpa. We will find out who did this to you. So as you can see, events like this just affect so many people in such ways. I'm still just feeling it from speaking to Valerie right before I started recording this. And just, hearing her voice break as we're talking about certain aspects of this case. Time just doesn't heal certain things like this. These people need justice also. December 16th, 2016, a $10,000 reward is being offered in the 2008 pipe bomb killings of Moses Lake residents. Walker, a retired electrician, had returned to the Moses Lake area in the mid-1990s after an on-the-job injury in Ohio left him unable to work, according to Sheriff's Office spokesperson Kyle Foreman. I know that this article seems a little out of order for BrainScratch, but I wanted to share with you guys more information about these men. I can also tell you, Valerie was sure to tell me how active Bill was, how much he loved, cooking for his family and stuff like that. He had a particular ham that he wanted to go and pick up for his family as well. So let's find out a bit more about these men as we continue here. Walker and his wife Dorothy settled east of Moses Lake to care for the widow of a fishing buddy. Walker spent his time repairing cars and small power tools. Once again, just calling out what type of man this was. They literally moved to this area to take care of someone else. The morning of August 2nd, 2008, Walker decided to stay home while his wife was with relatives out shopping. About 8:30 or 9, Walker carried a battery charger to his shop and plugged it in, unaware a pipe bomb was inside. Now, I'm not sure where the detail is coming about him carrying the battery charger. As far as I know, no one witnessed that actual event. So I don't know if that's just, something that the author kind of dropped in there, but I haven't found any information to suggest that he actually carried it. And how the battery charger gets to him is kind of a big point of contention. According to the podcast that Mike Morford put out, it was a battery charger that was actually his, that he had lent to a different family member for a period of time. We're going to get into some more of those details when I get into my notes from Valerie. Let's try to keep that in mind. Andy Otto, Walker's adult grandson, went to the Walker house and arrived at about 1:30. They're saying a.m., but from what I was told by Valerie, it's actually p.m. A pipe bomb inside the Charger had exploded, blowing a hole in the shop wall and killing Walker. A couple walking their dog heard the blast and saw a puff of smoke come from the shop. A couple sleeping in an RV in Walker's driveway also heard the explosion. The two did not go to investigate, but later helped police piece together a timeline of events. Some of what Valerie told me, I'm just going to share with you guys here. So first of all, a couple is walking their dog, hear this blast, see the puff of smoke, and don't call the authorities. She's still baffled by that, and I'm with her. Outside of that, I don't know that it's actually a couple sleeping in an RV. There was one man in particular that lived on the property in a camper. We'll call his name's we'll just call him Frank for this. Frank was there, heard the explosion, also didn't call the authorities, didn't go to check on Bill. And this is a long-term friend of Bill's. Bill basically let Frank come and live on his property in that camper. Outside of that, Bill let one of his sons come and live on this property. There was actually two houses there. His son was living in the other house. His son, and I guess it would be Bill's grandson, were at home during this time and heard the explosion, did not go check on him, did not call the authorities. So really strange that we have so many people within such a close area and no one is just checking on this guy that by all means seems to be taking care of everyone else. It's really kind of heartbreaking. Investigators determined Walker was not the target and was a victim of mistaken identity, according to foreman. Adame was unemployed at the time and living with his girlfriend, Heather Smith, in a home just north of Moses Lake. Smith had reportedly found a police scanner in a paper grocery bag in the driveway of her home and moved it to the porch, foreman stated. Just after midnight, August 3rd, Adame brought the scanner into the kitchen and plugged it in. An explosive device inside the scanner detonated, killing him instantly. ATF technicians soon established that the bombs that killed Walker and Adame were nearly identical, foreman stated. Both IEDs were well built, not by an amateur, and hidden within items which would seem attractive yet harmless to the recipients. Investigators concluded Adame was the target of his explosive. No link was ever established between Walker and Adame. So, a couple of interesting points to touch on here. We now know that Adame did not build this himself, or if he did, he went to the trouble to build it and then place it outside for his girlfriend to find, and then for her to bring it up on the porch, and then he brought it into the kitchen and then plugged it in to blow himself up. The logic just doesn't really make sense. So I think the theory of someone doing this to end their own life isn't really holding up for me. And now we have some more detail. But outside of that, we also have some potential insight into, did someone want to silence Heather at some point? Because she knows about this device. Obviously, she spoke to the authorities. They have the details of what she did when he wasn't around. Was there some other information that she gave them that possibly someone didn't want them to have, something along those lines? I don't know, but I think it is certainly something that we have to think about. And we have another article here about the $10,000 reward. Still doesn't bring new leads in Moses Lake pipe bomb killings. Grant County officials have not given up yet, but after a little over a month after a sizable reward was put up for tips and information, no new credible leads in 8-year-old Moses Lake pipe bomb murders have surfaced. According to our news partner, KNDU-TV, Grant County officials did receive a number of tips about the two deaths, but the result was not what they were looking for. Kyle Foreman of the sheriff's office says ATF and FBI officials did determine last month they believe the two bombs were made by the same person, but the new leads were not credible. Now, keep in mind that is close to when the reward was actually offered. We've had much more time pass now, but this case is still open, obviously, and that's why we've got nice people like Mike Morford covering this. people reaching out to me to cover it. So if you've got information out there, please, please, please get that information in. I found a article. This is a blog written by someone that lives local in the area. And I did see that some family members got upset at some of the content of this blog, particularly when it's theorizing about the fact that one or both of these men might have taken their own lives. But Carl Brannon is the author of this piece. The manufacture of pipe bombs is not that uncommon in rural America. My understanding is that in the U.S., most bombs are built by juvenile males who wish to make big noises, and that this is amazingly common in rural areas. In fact, our waiter at dinner tonight vouched that he knew people who had assembled pipe bombs. His opinion seemed to be that the 69 and 53-year-old Grant County victims were killed while assembling bombs, and from the complaints in comment sections of the local newspaper blogs, I suspect this opinion is fairly common in Moses Lake and is vocally expressed to the survivors. I hope that opinion isn't expressed to the survivors. I don't think that it's a very strong opinion. I don't think that Bill did this to himself. Police have not been able to find any connection between Bill and Javier. So the fact of one of these men trying to do it to possibly kill the other doesn't make any sense. Both of these guys doing it themselves doesn't make sense because we have the experts telling us these bombs were made by the same man. The other death in Grant County was of 69-year-old grandfather in his shop. It is suspicious in several ways, particularly in that it is claimed that the lights were out when the explosion went off, and that the victim always kept the lights on while working in his shop. Valerie actually spoke to me about this, and she's pretty bothered by that fact as well. Bill had cataracts, and as a matter of fact, was getting ready to have surgery to try to get that corrected. And I asked her, I was like, is it normal that when he was in his shop, even if it was during the day, would he have kicked the lights on? And she said, yes. I also asked, was there windows in the shop? Would it have made sense for some reason that he wouldn't necessarily kick the lights on? She says, I do believe that there was windows, but they were facing into an alley. And kind of, you know, the general consensus we left with when I was talking to her was, even when I'm going to work in my shop, even if the whole garage door is open, I typically do turn on the light if I'm working on a workbench so I can see what I'm doing. And considering this is a 69-year-old man about to plug something in, I would think that he would probably kick the lights on just so he could at least see where the power cord was going, if nothing else. So she also talked about the theory that the lights could have been destroyed in the blast. She said it was actually that the switch was literally off. So for some reason, he was in there with that device and the lights were off. We don't know why. And he was a grandfather with no obvious relation to meth or inclination to building bombs. Homicide? What could the victim have done to attract a bomb attack? His family has no idea. And why bomb the workshop? Actually, Valerie, I don't know if I could say she has an idea. She has some theories that we're going to touch on that I do think are worth some consideration. And then we get to an article this year. Is it related? I don't think so, but I think it's close enough that it was worth mentioning to you guys. Over at KREM, Moses Lake PD find bomb while serving search warrant. This happened just in April of 2018. Moses Lake police officers responded to the Moses Lake Municipal Airport around 9 p.m. Monday night to assist in a controlled charge detonation after officers found an improvised explosive device, or IED. Once again, first of all, I'm wondering what type of warrant they were serving at the airport. I don't know if there's private hangars there or something along those lines, but for them to find a bomb at that location, kind of scary. But is this really related to this case? Without any experts saying, hey, we've looked at the makeup of these bombs and it does match these two victims, I really can't say that we have that. And this is pretty much the article that made me do the search on my own area to see, is this pipe bomb thing, is it that common? So this might just be a completely independent occurrence that's happening here, or maybe this is tied to the same person that's blowing up cars in that area. I'm not sure, but it did come up in my search, so I did want to share it with you guys. So once again, look at these men. We're talking two very, very different walks of life. And for some reason, someone killed them both the same day and in pretty much the same way. And that person is still walking around free. And that's why I want to once again show you the Crime Stoppers information. And yes, we do have the full phone number here, 1-800-222-8477. There's also the website, tricitiescrimestoppers.org, that you can visit. And Crime Stoppers has a policy. If you want to remain anonymous, you can absolutely remain anonymous. So please keep that in mind when you're considering this. There is also a Facebook group that has been put together on this. William Arlie Walker Unsolved Murder. I'll have a link to that down below so you guys can follow there and look for updates as well. Once again, very big thank you to my friend Mike Morford for the excellent work he did on this episode of The Murder in My Family. You will also find a link to that down below. There is a Web Sleuths thread, but it's literally one post and then Mike talking about his upcoming episodes. So not a whole lot at the Web Sleuths thread. So what did Valerie tell me on our phone call? Let's get to my notes and see what else we can fill in about this mystery. So when his family left, they initially started calling him fairly soon, primarily for two reasons. Valerie said that she noticed that a farmer's market was going on and she wanted to call him to ask him to stop by to pick up some green beans from the farmer's market. But on top of that, they were out the night before taking a walk. And remember that elderly widow that Bill was kind of keeping an eye on? I believe her name is Mrs. Oliver. And when they were walking, they noticed that Mrs. Oliver looked like she went to bed a little earlier than she usually did. I'm sure that they noticed that the lights were out. They were a little concerned about that. So Valerie said when they were leaving, she had asked her father, Bill, please check on Mrs. Oliver and make sure she's okay, because things looked just a little bit weird last night. So they were calling to basically hear from Bill, did they follow up with Mrs. Oliver and was she okay? I asked Valerie, were they using cell phones to try to call Bill? She said yes, and Bill actually had a cell phone himself. They did find it in the house next to his favorite chair, so he did not have it with him when he was out in the shop working. Dorothy, Bill's wife, did pass away this year, January 13th. Andy, the nephew that finds Bill, works late. He works a third shift, basically. So he was supposed to go meet up with his grandfather, and they were going to continue working on a project. She thinks it was probably a car that they were working on together. He didn't get there until later in the afternoon. This kind of caused law enforcement to take a look at him in terms of him potentially being involved, because he had plans to meet up with his grandfather, didn't really nail those plans. His grandfather, of course, is killed, and then later in the day, he's the one to find him. And when it comes to the charger, Valerie thinks that there might be more than one charger going on here. She's not sure if the story that we've been hearing about the charger is exactly as linear as it's been presented. She's saying that Andy in particular did borrow a charger from Bill, but it was for starting his truck. It was a car charger. The type of charger that we've been hearing, at least through the articles, is a marine battery charger. It's a charger that is used for batteries that are on boats. Now, there is another nephew, and she did say that, I'm not sure if she had recalled this or if her mother told her she recalled this, but there was a conversation with this other nephew and Bill that this nephew had found a broken marine battery charger. And Bill said, bring it by, don't throw it out because I'm sure that I can fix it. And that happened about a week before Bill's death. So just some more stuff to keep in mind there. Now, in terms of where they lived, there was an RV park that was behind their property. I guess the owner back there, they had a bit of a rough relationship, let's say, with Bill. That neighbor was saying that Bill's kids were always making trouble, that they were taking stuff from them or breaking stuff on their side of the property, things of that nature. The most interesting point to mention about that person is he was a former munitions expert in the Army. And obviously we do know from the analysis that we just went through in the articles, they're saying that it was probably built it wasn't built by an amateur. This is built by someone with experience. So is there something to that? I really don't know. I mean, your kid's making trouble for your neighbor. Is that enough of a reason for doing something like this? Was there maybe some other reason at play with that neighbor? I don't know, but there was a little bit of a rough relationship there. There was a neighbor on another side, and this person is a known drug dealer. And I think that's where this theory that Bill wasn't the proper target might have come from. Living that close to someone that is a known drug dealer, it could be that that person was the target. And that kind of comes into this theory that there was some type of drug cartel that was moving into the area and basically eliminating their competition. What's interesting is I asked her, well, is that neighbor still around? Is that guy and she said, yeah, and he still lives there. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that theory really holds up then, because how's that guy going to survive? You know, they wind up killing an old man and they just kind of, oh, well, we're not going to move our business into that area. Just, I don't know. I'm really struggling with that aspect in terms of it being a solid theory. But once again, we have a little interesting point here. That neighbor was arrested approximately, she said it might have been a week before Bill's death. And there is some, I guess we could say, rumor mill kicking around that neighbor might have thought that Bill called the cops on him, or Bill had in some way been responsible for that arrest. So does that guy have a reason to wind up murdering Bill and then also potentially Javier? I really don't know, but I'm just telling you the information as it came to me. I did ask her, did either of these neighbors have a boat? And she said, I don't think they did. So if this boat battery charger was really meant to take care of that drug dealing neighbor and he didn't have a boat, probably wouldn't have been very effective. As a matter of fact, if he was in the same business as Javier was, why wouldn't you just do the same trick twice? Go to some surplus shop, buy a couple of police scanners, and then do the same thing for both people. I don't know why you would change the electronics if you were targeting the same type of person. I asked her if anyone had any benefit come out of this in terms of the family with Bill's passing. And basically, they really didn't, because all of his property all of a sudden became Dorothy's property. So getting rid of Bill wouldn't necessarily, give any of the grandkids or nieces or nephews or anyone any particular benefit. What has happened since is the house was up for sale. It sat there for 10 years. Apparently, no one wanted to buy the house where this had happened. And Andy, the grandson, just recently did wind up buying the house, and he's using it as a rental property, but apparently he did feel like he wanted it to stay in the family. Now, in terms of DNA, Valerie did tell me that the relatives were all tested, they believe, to match their DNA against something. So it seems like the authorities might have some sample. We don't know the results of that. We don't know the results of this testing. It could be that they found a sample of one of the other relatives' DNA and they've just excluded that as evidence at this point. But at one point, they did go through and collect DNA from several of the relatives that were there. Another interesting angle is the son that lived on the property in the other house had a girlfriend that he wanted to move in there, and Bill really didn't want that to happen. He basically put a stop to that. Literally the day after Bill was killed, that girlfriend moves into that house. So if anyone within the family, if we're looking for motives for anyone to benefit from that situation, I would hate to think that would be the reason to kill somebody. That's the only one little piece that could potentially be a benefit to someone that was within the family. And finally, I did hear some information on the podcast about one of the nephews failing a polygraph. I asked Valerie about that, and she really didn't have much information. She's not even sure which nephew failed the polygraph. Of course, we don't know what questions were asked. And here we are 10 years later, and it looks like, no one has been charged with anything in this case. So despite a nephew failing a polygraph, I don't know if it was fruitful for law enforcement in any way. And of course, I know there's many of you out there that question the results of polygraphs as it is. If you have information about this case, please call Crime Stoppers. Please get that information in, and maybe On top of that, you'll get a $10,000 reward for bringing justice to this case and maybe some little sense of peace for both of these families that are suffering in this. All right, Brain Scratchers, that's where I turn it over to you. Please tell me your thoughts in the comment below about this case. Are there other theories that you can think of that I didn't touch on? Other aspects that you think should be looked into more? I want to hear all about it from you in the comments down below. Before we get to last week's comments, I want to thank several new patrons. Francine Kelly, thank you so much, Francine. Candace Glazier, Kiani Moore, and Katie Kadena. Hope I'm saying all those right, everyone. Thank you so much for supporting my work, keeping me here, doing what I love doing, and helping me help other people in these cases. I really appreciate your help in doing all that. So a couple of comments. First of all, I heard from several people that it looks like there was a special live stream. I don't know if you guys caught that, but for approximately a half a second, a few hundred of you watched video of my office wall. I'm really sorry about that, guys. There is literally a button that is for record and a button that is right above it for stream. I meant to hit record. I accidentally hit stream. I turned it right off, but YouTube sucked it up, pushed it out, and I think 32 of you gave that video an upvote. Thank you guys so much. I do need to do another live stream. I will do one again very, very soon. Someone also asked about case suggestions, how to make case suggestions. Of course, you can use the YouTube comments, but there are many, many comments, and I don't always get all of those. Twitter is a little bit better. I am pretty good about reviewing every single message that comes across on Twitter. And on top of that, I now have the Contact Me form that's at the bottom of lordandarts.com, where you can send case suggestions in as well. So several different ways that you can do that. I also want to give a very big thank you to the podcast My Favorite Murder, who decided to give myself and BrainScratch a big shout out. They were covering the case of Edward Edwards. That took me back in time a little bit and put me back in a little pool of frustration. If you are wanting to hear that, look for their episode that was shot, or I guess it wasn't shot, it was recorded live at the Connor Palace in Cleveland. And the mention is about 22 minutes in. And thank you to everyone that let me know about that. That was a pretty cool thrill. I really enjoyed that. So the comments from last week's episode, the case about Jennifer Odom, the young girl kidnapped and murdered 25 years ago in Florida. Let's start with a comment from Melody Presswood. Remember, Jenny, don't walk alone. A true mantra that we should be mindful of no matter the age. So many stories of a single person leaving a group of friends after a normal night out. A recipe for tragedy. The same goes for people leaving to just cool off, only to never be seen again. I have no answers. I just know that as humans, we all have a personal responsibility to look out for each other, to be aware. Unfortunately, the monsters are no longer in fairy tales. They walk, live, and exist among us. Thank you for sharing that, Melody. Very well written, and that's why I wanted to share that with everyone and tell you guys I'm so thankful that I know that we're a group of humans that are taking that responsibility and looking out for each other. So thank you guys for being part of that with me. The Lying Scotsman, he probably burnt or somehow destroyed her clothes to get rid of any possible DNA that is left in sexual assaults. I'm sure police have checked records to see if he drove a blue truck at that time. Great upload, John, as always. My thoughts are with the family. You make a good point, The Lying Scotsman. They probably did try to destroy most of that evidence. Of course, the musical instrument probably wouldn't have burnt very well. So yeah, it could be that that's what they did to try to get rid of any evidence in that case. And maybe that's why they didn't dump it with the stuff that was found. Although I'm kind of curious because the book bag was found, there was a book in it. That stuff probably would have burned just as fine as the clothing. I don't know. I'm still wondering about that. Bella, Hooters originated in Clearwater, Florida. I worked there for 10 years. Family place, summer on the water, boats pull up. I gave my kids the children's clothes. They sell merchandise in the restaurants. Thank you, Bella, for giving us a little bit of the backstory into Hooters originating from that area. And it's weird because people are still kind of going back and forth on that point. You know, she shouldn't be wearing stuff like that. Yes, she should. I think that it's strange because the culture around Hooters has kind of been called out recently, and Ultimately, it comes down to, is it a cool looking sweatshirt and your kid's walking by the store? They're probably going to say, hey, mommy, can I have one of those? And if you're a parent that takes your kid to Hooters, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. There's, good food. And especially if it's the types of locations you're talking about, being on the water and having boats pull up and all that. I get it. I see it on both sides. I went through this when I was basically looking into this case. I went through this same kind of feeling of, oh, should she have been wearing that? There's no way they could be talking about that. But, oh, yeah, she was. And, okay, maybe it's not so weird. So I get it. But you guys are still hammering it out in the comments. Margaret Werduritz. I hope I'm saying that right, Margaret. I'm so used to seeing your name in the comments, and I don't know if I've ever pronounced it out loud. Could this person be someone who worked for Jennifer's father in the tree business, since the kids on the bus said there might have been a ladder on the back of the truck? I would think that all Jennifer's father's contacts should have been checked out. I would agree, because especially if small businesses, sometimes they'll run their shops right out of their home. And if you do have employees, they're going to come by your home to pick up materials for whatever job they're going to. So I do think that's a really good point. And Randy kind of ties into that here. Randy Hughes, I'm really feeling John about this being someone who was aware of her daily routine. I lived in the country before, and the story reminded me of how little traffic would pass through my house each day. Also, did I hear correctly that her mother's father owned a local business? I get a strong brain scratch feeling that this could have been an employee of the family business or one from a similar company in the area. The killer may have seen or met Jennifer while she was hanging out around the area where the workers were and become infatuated with her. I just don't get the brilliant serial killer vibe on this one, but rather someone less educated. Really good point, Randy. I can just tell you I agree with those considerations. And if we're talking about the time frame, could it be that it was near the end of those employees' work days, and typically they would go there to drop off equipment maybe, and they started noticing this pattern of that's when Jennifer could be coming home? Might be something to that. I would really like to hope that investigators thoroughly vetted anyone that was working with the father, for the father or with the father, because it could also be other situations, other contractors of a different type, or possibly even friends that would just meet up with him after work or something along those lines. A Mommy's Life vlog. Because of stories like Jenny's, I have become the crazy neighbor lady. If there is a parked car on my street and someone's just sitting in it, I take a picture of the car and license plate. If there are people I notice around our neighborhood the same time of day, circling, I take pictures, and if it really seems off, I call the cops. We have home invasions in my city pretty regularly, so to me, it's just smart thinking. But also, I live near a school, and I know there are nasty people out there, and if me being over-vigilant could help someday or deter a crime, I'm going to keep doing it. Thank you so much, A Mommy's Life vlog. I really appreciate that sentiment. I'm a bit of that same type of person, and I love that you've put it together in such a concise way so we could share that with everyone else. Almost like our own little virtual neighborhood watch that we've got going on here on the Lord and Arts channel. Thank you. Thank you for sending that in. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you back here on Monday with a brand new Case Cracked.